Hello and welcome to Tank and AFV News. My name's Tom and, well, I'm here at home making a video because I haven't left the house in days. Yes, it's the coronavirus. You'd think I'd have more videos since I'm stuck at home, but I don't know. It's sort of hard to think about things unrelated to just sort of getting through this whole crisis. So, anyhow, yes, weird times, very weird, and I had something really weird happen to me recently, which was the discovery of this relatively new book that came out last year, Steel Steeds Christie, How a Little Book Caused a Big Kerfuffle, by Charles M. Provence, however you say his name, and J. Edward Christie. Now, for those who have followed my website or channel diligently over the years, you know I've mentioned Steel Steeds Christie a few times. It was a book written by J. Edward Christie, who was the adopted son of Walter Christie, the famous tank inventor, sort of was designing stuff between World War I and World War II. And he wrote a book way back in the 80s. It's sort of printed on a vanity press. Copies are very hard to come by and very expensive. And it was not a well-reviewed book at the time that it came out. On my website, when I was updating it regularly, which I sort of stopped doing a couple years ago, just through laziness, I had done, back in 2005, a post sort of for what I would call my From the Vault series, where I would go through old whatever online sources I could find, whether it be archives or whatever, and find old articles. And one of the main places that I really like to pull material from was old issues of Armor magazine, so the official journal of the U.S. Armor Corps, and or Armor Branch. And back in the 80s, when Steel Steeds Christie came out, they had a pretty decent-sized book review of it, which was quite negative, pointing out a lot of the flaws of this book. And that isn't that unusual. The unusual thing is then the author wrote a letter, and for like the next 3 issues was this back and forth of people arguing over this book. And just the sheer doggedness of the author in defending it, and then the attacks coming out. I just thought the whole thing was really interesting. I mean, it's sort of amusing, especially since some of the people writing in were names I recognize, people who are respected authors or researchers in the field. So I went through the 3 relevant issues of Armor and reprinted the letters, sort of just laid them out in the original review by Colonel John Leo, then Edward Christie's reply. Then I'm trying to remember, there was a reply from Fred Crimson. There was a few other people back and forth. And I mostly just thought it was sort of funny. And at that point, I hadn't even had a chance to see the original book because, like I say, used copies of this thing go for like $100 or so, if you can find one. Well, shortly after I posted that, a fellow who goes by or at least at the time went by the name Volketten on the World of Tanks historic forum, contacted me and said, "Hey, you know what? I actually bought a copy of this thing." And he's like, "Yeah, I'm going to write a review for it if you want to publish it." I'm like, "Sure, that'll be fun. Might as well do a modern review of this book that almost nobody's seen." And he was also kind enough to photograph the book and send me a digital copy so I could view it for myself. So that's all I've known of the book, and posted it and put it up there. And I'm guessing Edward Christie has to be long dead by this point. I mean, if he was a teenager in the 20s or 30s when his father was doing these machines, and so it's sort of long in the past. Let's have a little fun with this. And I hadn't really thought about it since. I think I mentioned the book. I think I did like 5 terrible books on tank history, and I included that one in there. And hadn't really thought about it again until suddenly this popped up, and it's a very strange book. Number one, it is just a reprint. The majority of the book is just a reprint of Steel Steeds Christie, which is sort of nice because they sell this for $10, and if it was just a reprint of the book for $10, I'd be like, "Oh, that's fantastic," because I don't want to pay $100 to get it. But the weird thing is the subtitle: "How a Big Book Caused a Little Kerfuffle," or a little book caused a big kerfuffle. Sorry. So the intro of the book is basically the author, who had been one of the people that had read the book when it came out and was sort of aware of the initial back and forth in the letters of Armor, decided to write a couple pages preface, just sort of explaining it, and then reprinting all those letters from Armor magazine, sort of similar to what I had done. Go back and so that sort of made me go, I wonder why he's doing this, or what would have inspired him to think it was a kerfuffle worth mentioning, since the original letters happened back in the 80s. You know, the only person that I know of that's talked about it since then was my post. And then sort of the kicker is, without having contacted me or Volketten for permission, he then reprints the book review that Volketten had written and posted on my website without permission, which I thought was really strange. So somehow someone thought a post on my website about a 40-year-old book and some 40-year-old letters and reviews and one single modern review constituted a big kerfuffle. That's just, it's kind of weird. And the guy seems to take umbrage at the fact that people criticize the Christie book. But, you know, as far as, you know, I went back and reread the review letters, and the reviewers are all pretty, I think their tone is appropriate. I mean, I'm sorry, I know this guy's, you know, Edward Christie is writing about his dad, and had an emotional, you know, obviously he's got a bias. It comes through pretty clearly in the book that he thinks his father is a brilliant engineer and wants to defend his father's legacy. But, you know, it's not a memoir. If you're writing a book that is intended to be a history of somebody's career, you got to do the research. You have to have your facts right. You just gotta. It's not acceptable, even if you are somebody's son. You know, you can't just be, you know, in his defense, sort of like, well, my dad told me that, or that's how I remember it, so it's got to be true. And other people are like, no, we have the actual archival documents. Like, and, you know, other people looked at these manuscripts and tried to help him out, and he refused it. So, you know, there's just really no excuse for it. It's just not a well-written book. So, I'm not sure why Mr. Province seems so determined to defend Mr. Christie or whatever. And I frankly feel a little like, I really wonder if he went back and went to those original issues of Armor and found those letters, or if he just looked at my posting and just copied them from there. I don't know that for sure, but I'm going to guess it's a possibility, since he also just stole the review that Volketten had written. And it's sort of funny because he kind of then goes on to accuse Volketten of, you know, being an armchair historian, and that, you know, it's a lot easier just to criticize than to write stuff. Volketten, I mean, I'm not going to use his real name, though. I mean, I know him. He's written several books of his own. He is somebody who does quite a bit of actual research, and research where he provides sources and follows proper historical methods of writing. So, yeah, I mean, if you want a reprint of Steel Steeds Christie, you know, like I said, this one, it's $10. There's nothing spectacular about it. It's just black and white, regular copy paper, sort of what you'd expect from sort of a self-published, small-published book. And like I said, $10 is, I'm sure this guy is not making big money off these copies, you know, considering what printing costs are for small-scale runs, but it's still, like, I'm kind of loath to give him money, frankly, because I think that there's just something really kind of, I don't know, slightly shady about this whole thing. So, anyhow, yeah. Steel Steeds Christie, how a little book caused a big kerfuffle. And by kerfuffle, I mean somebody posted something on a website. Alright, so yeah, this is one of the weirder things that's happened to me in my days of creating online media and content about armored history. So, alright, well, that's all I got to say on that one, and we will catch you on the next one.